attended Arizona State University, where two wonderful things happened. She met her husband, Pax, and they have now been happily married for 3 years. And a journalism professor, she calls her Obi-Wan, encouraged her to apply for a part-time job at the East Valley Tribune, gaining the necessary real-world experience that led to her job at the Ahwatukee Foothills News after she graduated in 2007. Emily is only 27 years old, has not seen the world, reached enlightenment, or won any Humanitarian of the Year awards, but her reverence for galaxies far, far away has never been extinguished. And that's what she's here to talk to us about today.
Thank you, Jen. Pastor Ron's final sermon on July 29th inspired me to try my hand at this, but as Jen said, I don't really know how much I have to offer. I don't have much wisdom to draw from my all of 27 years of experience on this earth. I don't travel much, so I've had very little interaction with cultures other than my own. I've only gone on a total of 2 camping trips in my youth, both of which I came back with some hilarious, now that I'm looking back on it, horror stories. One included my dad getting lost overnight. So I haven't had many chances for very many nature-inspired epiphanies. I'm also regretfully not much of a humanitarian when it comes to volunteering my time to help others. I think I went to the Andre House and served food for the homeless maybe twice in high school, but that's about it. I think the only thing I could offer to you is to share my thoughts on what I find to be the most spiritual and the most profound, and that's the cosmos. In fact, I find it so moving that sometimes, if I miss a service here this 1 week, I'll simply just watch a few episodes of Carl Sagan's The Universe, Into the Universe of Stephen Hawking, or How the Universe Works, narrated by Mike Rowe on Netflix, and I'll just call it even. There's no way I could adequately cover such a broad topic in a single sermon, so don't worry, I won't even try. But my only hope is to provide for you a sense of perspective without boring you too much, and to try to explain our role in the grand scheme of things. It may sound strange to refer to something that's typically thought of to be in the realm of science, a world of theories and physics and telescopes and calculations, as spiritual. But as the late, great Carl Sagan once said, science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality. When we recognize our place in an immensity of light years and in the passage of the ages, when we grasp the intricacy, beauty, and subtlety of life, then that soaring feeling, that sense of elation and humility combined, is surely spiritual. So are our emotions in the presence of great art or music or literature, or acts of exemplary selfless courage, such as those of Mohandas Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. The notion that science and spirituality are somehow mutually exclusive does a disservice to both. And that's exactly how it makes me feel to think about our place in the cosmos, to elevate myself from the daily stresses of newspaper deadlines and home repairs, of post office hours, dirty dishes, Facebook political debates, the occasional family drama, and to really think of how small we are in the great scheme of things. I find great awe and surprisingly solace in that sense of perspective. So how small are we talking here? Astronomers have estimated that the universe contains 1 atom for every 88 gallons of space. Now, I can only assume that that's significant to scientists, but because atoms are so inconceivably small, it's really hard to grasp what that means. So here's another comparison I found that made more sense to me. Imagine that if the universe were a cube measuring 20 miles on all sides. So to get a sense of scale, I Google mapped it, and it's almost 20 miles from this pulpit here straight to my office in Ahwatukee at 51st Street and Elliott Road. From my office to Power Road north of the Loop 202, from Power Road north of the Loop 202 to Pima Road and Dynamite Boulevard, and then from Pima Road and Dynamite Boulevard back to this pulpit again. Imagine that area reaching as far into the sky as it is wide. And now imagine that cube is completely empty, save for one grain of sand. That grain of sand represents all of the matter that exists in this universe. Which is amazing, considering that the universe consists of more than 100 billion galaxies, and each galaxy, on average, contains more than 100 billion stars. Sticking with the sand metaphor here, scientists have estimated that the number of stars in the universe is greater than the number of grains of sand on all of the beaches in the world. On a clear night, we can only see the equivalent of one grain of sand. Or one handful, I'm sorry. What's even more mind-boggling is the possibility that our known universe might not be the only one in existence. My current favorite theory of the Big Bang comes from theoretical physicist Nikodem Popolowski at Indiana University, who conjectured that when a black hole forms, a universe is born at the same time from a white hole on the other side of the wormhole. This would explain how, in the Big Bang, matter would simply materialize from nothing, packed so densely that in the first trillionth of a second, space expanded by the factor of 100 trillion times. That's a 10 followed by 50 zeros in a sliver of a second. I realize this theory would be very difficult to prove, but considering the advances of scientific discovery just in the last century, a definite pattern emerges. We thought that our Milky Way galaxy was the only one until 1925, when Edwin Hubble discovered what we now call the Andromeda Galaxy. Before 1991, and this is just 21 years ago, the worlds of our own solar system were the only known planets. And since then, more than 778 planets have been found orbiting other stars. And currently, we think our universe is the only one, because we don't have the technology advanced enough to prove otherwise just yet. I'm just saying. Popolowski's theory makes me happy, because the thought of the heat death of the universe, or the big freeze, a scenario under which the continued expansion of the universe just results in the universe approaching absolute zero temperature, it fills me with unbelievable sadness. I don't like the thought of all existence dying out completely. I doubt that anybody does. However, if our universe was born out of the black hole of another, and our universe is creating black holes itself, this multiverse could be a veritable ant farm of never-ending activity, with the black holes serving as tunnels just to another part of the colony. So even if this universe loses all of its heat, existence will continue elsewhere, and I find great comfort in that. Zooming into our own galaxy is equally fascinating in its scope. The diameter of our Milky Way galaxy is so vast that if you could travel as fast as the speed of light, which is 186,282 miles per second, it would take you 100,000 years to cross it. The nearest big galaxy to our Milky Way, the Andromeda Galaxy, is 2 million light years away. Which begs the question, at least for me, of whether or not we'll be able to reach another Earth-like planet someday and colonize the Milky Way. I mentioned earlier that scientists have found more than 778 planets over the past 2 decades. Well, the good news is that they think 5 of them might be habitable. The bad news is it's going to be quite the commute. The most similar one to Earth that they found is named Gliese 581g in the constellation Libra. It's about 2.6 times the mass of Earth and about 1.4 times Earth's diameter. It's a bit chillier there, with a surface temperature of about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and it orbits its sun every 32 days. Oh, but is about 20 light years away. And that's our best match. The other 4 are not much better, and they're farther away to boot. Furthermore, I don't see a manned exploration team clamoring to get there anytime soon. We've just barely begun to check out Mars, for goodness sake. Not that I'm complaining, I think that's great. But it does mean that we're stuck here on Earth for a little while. And thinking about our lack of options really emphasizes why we need to make a commitment to take care of this planet to the best of our ability. I know as you use that the environment is always a priority, so please forgive the very literal cliche here that I'm preaching to the choir. But until someday we figure out how to travel as fast as the speed of light, or until we decide that it's worth the investment to pour billions of dollars into a spacecraft that we can guarantee we will never see or hear from again, there is no planet B. This is all we've got. And if we, as a species, don't start taking care of it better, nature will adapt, and it probably will not adapt in our advantage. I was raised in a Catholic household, but once I got to college and I took a beginner's astronomy class, I began to question my beliefs for the first time, as many college-age people do. For several years, I was directionless, feeling insecure about my belief system, about where to draw my morality from, and how to raise my hypothetical unborn children. After long and careful thought, I decided to describe myself as an agnostic, adopting a very Socratic mantra of the only thing I know for sure is the fact that I know nothing. When I found the Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation in Chandler, I jumped at the chance to take the Building Your Own Theology class that they offered. Not only did I find it extremely helpful in fine-tuning my own personal belief system, but it was also a great way to get to know members of the community in a small group setting. My favorite little assignment that we had was when we were instructed to fold a sheet of paper into quarters and draw our perception of God at 4 different stages in our lives. The first photo I drew was from my childhood, the first image I could remember of anything religious. It was a plaque that hung above my bed, a painting of 2 little children crossing a rickety bridge at night, the older girl comforting a frightened boy as water broke over rocks below them. Behind them was a beautiful angel in pink and teal robes, holding her arms out and protecting the children from harm. My childhood perception of God was a comforting one, knowing that nothing bad could happen to me because God loved me, that He watched over everything I did and even knew how many hairs were on my head, as I was often told. When I turned 10, that was possibly the most Catholic I had ever been in my life. I felt 100% comfortable in my beliefs and was extremely involved in my religious education under the direction of my teacher, Mr. Wysocki. I dressed as St. Emily de Rodat for All Saints' Day. Everybody in class had to because it was a Catholic grade school. But I volunteered to tape Touched by an Angel so that we can watch it in class. And I even played Jesus in our 5th grade shadow play of Stations of the Cross. I was the 9th station where he falls for the 3rd time. And I participated in my first guided meditation along with my class. Mr. Wysocki instructed us to go into our little heart room and meet with Jesus. So in my second picture, I drew what I imagined there, a big empty room with a heart-shaped booth in one of the corners where Jesus came out of like some Valentine's Day themed confessional to talk to me. My relationship with God was a very personal one at that point in my life. For about 6 years, from college until 2010 when I found the UUs, I didn't put much thought into how I pictured God. So the third photo I drew was a big bubble-lettered question mark. I didn't know. But in that time, I gained a new perspective on what seemed to me to be the main purposes of many of our world religions had to offer, which are to comfort those who look up into the night sky and feel so small, so insignificant, and afraid of their own mortality. Those who need to know that they are special and loved, and that if they're good, they get to go to a place where there is no suffering, no pain, where the virtuous ones that they loved and lost await them with open arms and they get to live forever. The more I thought about it from the outside of the church looking in, the more it began to look like a fairy tale for the frightened masses. I mean no offense to you if some of you out there do believe in an afterlife, but just for me, the traditional westernized religious depiction of heaven brings to mind the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So then, what's the point in morality? Why even bother being kind to another, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of individuals, if there might not be eternal bliss waiting for me as a reward for doing so? And I realized, because whether there is a reward for doing it in the afterlife or not, the fact of the matter is that life in this universe is so incredibly few and far between. The sheer odds that we exist at all are unfathomable. So to treat life as anything other than an amazing gift, a winning lottery ticket, if you will, would be objectively wrong, no matter how you slice it. We need to make a commitment to be kind and compassionate to one another, simply because we managed to exist. To quote the Dalai Lama in his infinite wisdom, "True compassion is not just an emotional response, but a firm commitment founded on reason." The Dalai Lama also said, "Given the scale of life in the cosmos, one human life is no more than a tiny blip. Each one of us is just a visitor to this planet, a guest who will only stay for a limited time. What greater folly could there be then to spend this short time alone, unhappy or in conflict with our companions? Far better, surely, to use this short time here in living a meaningful life, enriched by our sense of connection with others and being of service to them." Back to my homework assignment really quick for the fourth and final drawing. Now that the cosmos plays such a pivotal part of my own theology, I felt the entire universe had to be considered when I try to think of what a supreme being might actually be. Thinking of our lives floating around on this teeny tiny planet, it reminds me of the little Who's down in Whoville on a dandelion held by Horton the elephant, and so that's what I drew. It is my personal belief that there may be a supreme being orchestrating this cosmic dance, or grace, as Ron once referred to God before it had been given human dimension. I like that so much that I wrote it down. Or maybe there isn't. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that this supreme being, or grace, isn't much interested in my day-to-day life, nor does it know how many hairs are on my head. I think that's just a part of human nature. To assume that it's all about me, that we're more important than we actually are. After all, we still thought the sun revolved around the earth until the 16th century. We think so highly of ourselves, in fact, that we think we've figured out the cosmic purpose of life, the universe, and everything. Us, humans, with brains that are this big. We know all there is to know. We are so sure of ourselves that we are willing to fight wars with people who disagree. We kill each other over arguments about what happens when you die and fail to see the irony in that. In my opinion, for a human to presume to understand the answer to the question of ultimate reality is more presumptuous than ants claiming to understand how a carburetor works. It's just too complicated for us to comprehend, even if it were explained to us. And perhaps even in a higher dimension that we can even perceive. When it comes down to it, humans are only capable of perceiving very, very little. The human eye can see less than 1% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. And if physicists are right about M theory, or are at least on the right track, there could be up to 11 dimensions when we can only observe 3. Or, well, 4 if you can consider our awareness of space-time, so that's the 4th one. But maybe this big picture that I like to think about, multiverse and all, isn't really the big picture at all. Maybe it's just 1% of 3/11ths of it. I'm not claiming to have all the answers here. In fact, to the contrary, my whole system of beliefs hinges on the fact that I have no answers at all. And I'm not trying to change anyone's mind if your theological views conflict with mine. I only know what I can judge in my heart to be logical, for whatever that's worth. And all I know is, when I look up into the night sky, and I feel that pang of insignificance, I do not feel fear. I do not fear my own mortality, nor do I worry about what happens after I die, because there is no need. I am simply grateful for the few decades that I will have on this earth, as Carl Sagan would say, to be a way for the cosmos to know itself. I'm also really grateful for the opportunity to get to share my viewpoints with all of you, so thank you. I think it's healthy to think about our lives in this context every once in a while, to realize that we, as a species, are too small to go through this alone, or even in divided groups of man-made boundaries. We're too isolated to ignore the way that we mistreat our planet. We have to make a commitment, not only to take care of our little blue boat home, but to take care of each other as well. Because, as Carl Sagan once said, for small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing with us wisdom that's obviously way beyond her age. Please stand as you're willing and able and join in the singing of a hymn in the Teal Book. It is 1064, The Blue Boat Home, the same one that Emily just referenced. Please join me in the reading of our West Valley UU Church's mission statement. This church provides a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for our lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual services.
I have one more Carl Sagan quote for you guys. This one was in reference to a photograph that Voyager 1 took in 1990 when it was about 3.7 billion miles away from Earth, and it's just, you just see this little speck, and it's like inside this like a beam of light, and it's really trippy. From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest, but for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam.
Thank you, everybody, and please drift towards the next building so that we can have fellowship together. Thank you.